Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I guess we are live now. I'm going to check with the team if everything is working as well. Hope so. It looks like everything is working. So thanks for joining our for second tech community call today. So today is going to be mostly about exploring the impact on MEV on BSC. So lately we've seen a lot of discussion on GitHub, on BNB forum as well regarding MEVs and the potential impact for Validator on yield, on decentralization, centralization as well. So today we basically ask a few potential partners we can help as well, like implementing and discussing MEV within BSC. So I would just like to have a round of applause for like our guests which are here, which are Skype, WallChain, bloXroute. We as well have like one representative of BlockNative, which is here as well, potentially is going to enter the discussions as well. So maybe I will let you introduce a bit yourself as well. Like maybe you can start with Skype. If you could give it a bit of introduction, like what potentially you could provide as well.
Sure. Yeah, I can introduce Skip. I'm Magnus. Nice to meet everybody. First time talking to the BNB chain community. So we build sovereign MEV solutions. So what does that mean? It means we build MEV solutions that are highly configurable and modifiable. So what is like specifically, we build top of block auctions that enable chains to sort of dictate what kinds of rules they want for their MEV markets. So for example, if they want to prevent front running or prevent sandwiching or some certain kinds of MEV, they can do that. If they want to direct revenue to certain places in a censorship resistant way, where you can't have sort of like off-chain agreements, we can do that as well. And we've sort of built the solution out mostly in the Cosmos ecosystem, where we work with over 200-ish validators and a variety of front ends as well. So that includes like Osmosis, Juno, Evmos, etc. So super excited to be here, excited to present, and excited to hear more about MEV on Binance.
Thanks. Next, we can have like WallChain as well. We can present a bit yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Yuri, co-founder of WallChain together with Max, and at WallChain we give Web3 users the money that would otherwise be given to MEV bots, and we are fully application level, so we don't have any we don't operate on infrastructure level, we don't have any private RPCs or private mempools. Basically, we insert searchers strategies, MEV strategies inside user transaction and make sure users can capture the MEV themselves. So our goal is to give as most MEV back to Web3 users as we can. We are live on BNB chain, Polygon, Ethereum, and scaling to all EVM chains. Thank you. We are WallChain.
Thanks. Now we have another Yuri, which is not from WallChain, but from bloXroute.
Hi. So the difference is that I'm Israeli, so it's actually Uri, but like I go with Yuri because it's easier. Hi everyone, Uri, CEO and co-founder of bloXroute. bloXroute is a major DeFi and MEV infrastructure provider. We're one of the largest block builders on Ethereum. We're one of the largest relayers. We invented private transactions before Flashbot existed. We operate on BSC, we operate on Polygon, we operate on Solana. Already have a few solutions working in the BSC ecosystem for RPC providers, for private transactions, these kind of things. We're very deep in the MEV space, and we're working with the different chains and the validators to work with solutions which are beneficial for everybody. And so you can't really avoid MEV. And so the question is, how do we build a solution together which is actually good for everybody, for the validator, for the users, etc.
Great, thank you. And as guests as well, we have like a few representatives of BlockNative. So maybe you guys can introduce as well a bit yourself, and then we'll go with Victor, like from BNB chain.
Hey guys, Dan here from BlockNative. Yeah, we've been participating in the block space auctions going on Ethereum mainnet and have been sort of thinking about launching an OFA there as well. So we've been very much in the block space auction design space as of recent. We've had a few we've had our mempool services on BSC for a bit and BNB. And yeah, so we're sort of just like interested in, we think this is a pretty cool, basically opportunity to see how like the block space auction will be different with like sort of a new like validator architecture and set. So yeah, interested in providing input anywhere we can and just being helpful. Cool.
Yeah, just to echo what Daniel said, we've been mempool experts for the last 4 years, and this is kind of building on top of that. And I'm the solutions engineer for BlockNative, so hopefully we can find a way to work together or contribute to the discussion.
Great. And then we have Victor as well from BNB Chain team, which is here. Maybe you can give us a short intro and then we can go ahead.
Absolutely. So part of the architecture team working with the different aspects of the blockchain, both of the integration of particular technologies and also interoperability with the other blockchains currently, like also like on the ZK BNB, and naturally as part of this conversation around the governance, the mempools, and everything revolves around the block building.
Great. So before we start, I just want to as well let you know the community that we have as well, like a small context going ahead. So feel free to write a nice summary about the call that we're going to have today and submit it to us via DM before end of the day. And we potentially have some prize pool as well for the community, like based on the report that they're going to give us out of this call. So to go ahead as well, maybe let's introduce a bit what is MEV. So maybe Victor, you want to give us a short intro as well on that, and then maybe everyone can give like their own view as well of what potentially MEV is.
MEV is essentially umbrella of everything. Currently it just became a buzzword. Not in particularly good or bad, but sort of like everything that revolves around trying to get more money out of inefficiencies around blockchain, now called MEV. There is a lot of good and bad under this umbrella. Like I think the most like healthy way that we need and ought to think about it is smoothing the market, similar to traditional finance when there is an arbitrage. And this means like if you have two potentially disconnected entities trading the same assets at some difference, there is an opportunity to buy in one place and sell in another. This does not impact anyone and does not make anyone like feel bad. This is something that essentially existing players even out the same rates across the blockchain, and this is very good activity in the network, so that it doesn't matter where you go, or Uniswap, on PancakeSwap, or any other DEX around the blockchain, it will be the same price of the same assets, and it's actually good. It doesn't make users go or prefer one network over the other, as most of them will be the same pricing. And this is something that we need to thank the MEV guys for doing what they're doing. Naturally, like when there is a good part, there's also a bad part of the activity. And when we talk about even like from the activity itself, a lot of it revolves around changing the type, changing the order of transactions, and which means that in particular cases, there may be that the transaction that would otherwise be submitted to the block now has to wait because of the activities related to the MEV. And this is somewhat it's censorship in a way. It's like, let's face it, this is censorship. I should have been in the block and now I'm postponed to another block. So, but this is like light censorship. This is like, if I can wait, I can wait. But when we talk about sort of like more regulated censorship, like for instance, Tornado Cache, that has been totally banned through the MEV relayers, this starts to be worrisome in terms of where do we stop? Why do we
not totally? We're standing.
Oh yeah, you'll have your. I'm not actually talking about particular about you guys, but just like as a as an idea, like why should blockchain oblige to US government censorship and why not to other? So there's different another aspects to it, and so if particular layer is based in US, it has to oblige to US. If it's based in other country, it has to oblige to other country. It starts to be sort of like not decentralized as it should be, or at least invented, and starts to be more localized, depends on the entity or legal structure. So it's inevitable, I guess. We couldn't live like where everyone is anonymous, but this is something naturally to look an eye, to focus on it. Overall, also, like, we have different types of MEV where sort of like lurking around liquidation of assets and can potentially cause instability, sort of like crashing some kind of DEX. But again, like, this happens all the time in the traditional market as well, when hedge funds have automatic like selling. So this is in a way inevitable. It's not something that is good or bad. As long when we have a healthy activity, when I have a lot of participants, there will be actors who will try to get the most or to extract the most value. And this is what we came to talk about.
Exactly. I think it was a good summary of what potentially MEV is and the different impacts and like challenges as well it's bring to the industry. I don't know if any one of you like wanted to add like a small line as well on top of what Victor was just saying. Or
I would like to throw in 3 things, if you don't mind. First of all,
sure, go ahead.
I think Vic or Victor? Were you muted? I'll go with Vic.
Okay, you can do Vic, yeah.
Okay. So first of all, I agree with Vic. MEV now means everything. Generally speaking, when you actually look at the data, where is the money? What are the real big things? You have front running, seeing other transactions getting ahead like in front of them, which hurts the user, and you have arbitrage. Back running is also arbitrage. So these are really the 2 things. And arbitrage is a good thing, and somebody needs to do it because it means that it allows other to actually get the correct price. You do want arbitrage, so everybody trading everywhere get the correct price. So we want to facilitate as much arbitrage and allow for that to happen. Front running hurts the users. We've heard from our BSC users that it's like they're seeing themselves like affected by it, taking a step back from participation. So it really hurts the users, the front running part, to be thinking about how we can try to minimize and avoid affecting them. So MEV exists. It's very, very hard not to participate in it, because as soon as one validator starts doing it, others don't really have a choice. You could be the best validator out there, you could be the most ethical, but if somebody else does it, then his APY now goes up. If you don't do it,
exactly,
everybody will take their stake and move to him, because if I can choose where to put my money with 6% API or 7% API, I will always go for the 7%, which cause centralization, which is a super bad thing, and everything regarding censorship, etc. So whatever, I have strong opinions on MEV. Some MEV is really bad, and we should be working on solutions which try to replace front running with services which pay the validators but aren't harmful for the users but beneficial for the users. That's what we do under the cover about a few projects. But my main point I want to drive here is, whether you like it or not, we probably have to talk about it and do it. Okay, a validator, you want to be in favor of the users, you still have to do it, because otherwise we have centralization, which is even worse. So I just want to throw that out there.
No, it's definitely a good comment, especially like, as you said, like if one validator is doing it, or other validator, like let's say 10% of the validator of the network are doing it, then it's not fair as well for the other. So basically this is a good introduction as well to like, what's the current impact of MEV on BSC? So what's the current as well, like state on BSC network? Like, do we experience MEV? Are the validator doing MEV? Are the validator not doing it as well? So basically it's an open issue since like a few months within the community, as I said previously. And exactly, so we show that a few minority of validators are capable of doing MEV already on BSC. And as you said, like it's leading to unfairness, centralization, and lack of standard as well. So some potential validator might be able to have higher yield, which like centralized delegation and is impacting all the other validators as well. So for example, we can see that based on some data, like last year, the total profits on BSC reached like almost 90 million compared to 75 million on ETH. So there is even more MEV arbitrage potential, let's say on BSC than is happening on Ethereum, for example. So it's really interesting as well to see like once we have done those numbers to really lay out, okay, there is a real issue maybe on the BSC network, and we do need to address it, as you say, like lack of private transaction solution as well, complain about community regarding, as you say, like maybe some community member feel like unfair and they want to leave the network and join other network, or like lack of good practice as well on validator. And then as that's why we are here today as well, like what are the motivation of the discussions that we had. So I don't know if anyone wanted to add something on this slide about like the potential motivation, like why we are here today as well, and how we can potentially help validator on with different solutions.
I can add a few words.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a few words about like the impact of MEV on BNB ecosystem. It's like 90 million for the last year, and like for the last 30 days, it's 16 million, and projecting for 2023, it's like around 200 million at least. And if we compare it to like protocols on BNB chain, currently at Uniswap there are around 10 million locked on Uniswap on BNB chain. If we imagine that this money are rug pulled, stolen by someone, it would create a huge negative critical impact on the whole BNB ecosystem. And what if we imagine it happens 20 times? That's the size, that's the scale of the problem we are talking about. That's just some comparisons that I want to bring in. And about validators, I don't think we should like expect them to behave ethically and like just don't front run users. From their standpoint, they just don't want to leave the money on the table. And I don't think it's like a good decentralized permissional design to expect someone's ethical behavior. I think it's like better to have something like MEV boost and open marketplace for searchers to extract that value. And it's also beneficial for validators to have this open marketplace because they have like searchers competing for each other to extract more value. And at the same time, provide a solution for users. If they don't want to be front run, if they want to keep that the MEV value, they have the option to do that as well.
Thanks. Mag, you wanted to say something as well?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there's so many ways to approach this problem. One is from the validator side. And I do think you're going to see sort of at the end of this, like all the providers here have some kind of, solution either on the validator or on the application side. I think there's going to be things that come out of both. I think what we really want to be going towards, and what I've seen from the forums previously on GitHub, is people just don't know what's going on. Like who's running what, right? Who's running the bloXroute stuff? I've talked to like validators who said they have, some says they haven't. Who's running like what applications are running WallChain? Like I think people need to know what is going on. And also like at the same time, I think what the community should be optimizing for at the beginning, which I think is usually the best way, is like a couple of different experiments. Because what we've seen very quickly on Ethereum is sort of like Flashbots took over. And I think a lot of the providers here, which no one here is Flashbots. It's like everyone here is like tried to figure out something different, right? For example, we run almost all the MEV solutions on validators and Cosmos, but none of those solutions look anything like what Flashbots has built. And they're functional, right? And they allow for like preference expression for the users and also for validators. And I'm not saying like what we have is the best, but I think like what I would be excited to see starting off for Binance is sort of like new experiments take place in a place where there is a lot of MEV that traditionally has been inaccessible. So I think like that's usually something that I think is great for sort of a Cambrian explosion of solutions. Sorry, BNB chain.
I want to agree with Mag there. As somebody who actually is doing very well within the Flashbot ecosystem, so we're a major block builder, we're a major relayer, we make money and it's great. The censorship part actually like bothers me significantly. We shouldn't be like, I don't feel comfortable to be building 5 to 15% off Ethereum blocks. It's kind of like, wait, we're a 50 people company. Like, should we have the ability to control that much? So I strongly agree that we should be experimenting with the different approaches. what would be best for the users and for the validators and for the BNB community as a whole. One word regarding what Yuri said about the money. Even the numbers that Yuri was mentioning are a smaller portion of the really big money happening out there, because roughly half of all MEV is CeFi DeFi arbitrage. Half of it is front running, back running, like atomic arbitrage on chain. Half of it is large entities which have capital both in CeFi and in DeFi, capturing the arbitrage between CeFi that moves in real time and DeFi, which always provides somewhat of stale prices. And this is huge. And unlike atomic arbitrage and the other stuff and front running, which is very competitive, so those doing it don't get to capture as much value. We're seeing, and don't tell them, it's like everybody are our users and our customers. Okay, so all the large TradFi like shops, you know their name and I know their name. Everybody are on all the smart big shops that are doing CeFi DeFi arbitrage. They're keeping, I would say, order of magnitude of 40% off the profit to themselves, which is huge. This is really big money. So even these numbers, which are big, which you mentioned, it's actually bigger than that. We're not seeing the entire picture because we don't see half of the activity, which is half on-chain and half off-chain, and we don't see the off-chain part. We don't know what goes on the centralized exchange side. So just wanted to throw that
right. I mean, there's definitely, I can hear a lot of challenges that's in play MEV as well. But out of those challenges, I mean, what I see as well on the back is more like opportunities to fix it, to build, I don't want to say something new, but more like from scratch. So maybe this is where, like, as well on BSC, we have this opportunity, which is like, there's a lot of challenges, but now we have the opportunity to potentially bring maybe a new model for MEVs within like blockchain industry. Like, how can we build, like, based on what we've learned, maybe, or what's happening outside on other layer one, like, how can we bring it, but within a more maybe decentralized, fair, and transparent manner as well, and maybe more reliable from a financial point of view, where like not necessarily stealing money or doing something that is fair for everyone within the network. So there is as well like different MEV strategy, different infrastructure modification. So I don't know if someone wants to explain kind of different strategy, what it means as well from a user perspective, and how from an infrastructural perspective, what would need to be built, or what, for example, bloXroute is providing, what WallChain is providing, what Skip, what potentially BlockNative could provide as well. We could discuss as well. So we can all work together and like maybe dispatching different tasks of like who is doing what with which validator or something like that.
Anybody else want to go first? I feel like I talk too much. Well, I'll take a first stab if nobody's not. I want to talk a bit on the infrastructure side. I'll let maybe like Skip might have anything interesting to add on the strategies. From the infrastructure side, I do agree very much with that. That we could go the Flashbot route, and we might take pieces from the Flashbot route. I'm not sure we actually want relayers and block builders. We should definitely experiment with that. MEV owns this really on Ethereum and BSC. No other chain has actually enough activity that actually to produce that. On the infrastructure side, I do want to point out there is the short term and there is the long term. In the short term, we already found solutions that allow for private transactions and which protect users from getting front run. And things like backrun me. Send transaction, they will be backrun. So it will capture any arbitrage it captures, and it shares some of the value to the user, some of the value to the validator, some of the value to the searcher, etc. So we can allow quite a lot. We can't do everything. We can have same gas bundles. So we can even do bundles of transactions if we want. We have to create a few rules about it. It's not full-blown MEV gas or MEV boost, but it doesn't require to touch the validator in any way. And because like, oh, we could play around with feeding transaction in their order, etc., to provide a lot of the utility and the functionality, which benefit validators, benefit users, and more importantly, kind of like level the field. The worst outcome is if some people do it and some people don't do it, and the result is very unreliable. So as a user, you can like, I make a transaction. Can I make it private? Can I, like, will it go? Will I get front run? So you don't even know what you're getting. everybody either doing it or not doing it is a lot better than some are doing it and some are not doing it. So a community decision of kind of, okay, the BNB chain is going in this direction would be a good thing for the users. Again, from the infrastructure side, we can start to get a lot of the functionality without changing any of the code, just playing with the order of transaction, connecting to the validator, giving them in some order, giving it to them and not sending it out of there. We created a patch for BSC validators to avoid private transaction leaking out. It's already ready. We can give you to like next week if you want it. Long term, it's as some of the other people said, it's like, okay, what do we want it to look like? Do we want something like block builders and actually, outsourcing the entire block building? Do we just want bundles? Do we want something completely else? Do we want validators providing a new service and get paid for it? And this is how they make money, which is my favorite direction. And like, I want to incentivize them. As you said earlier, we don't want them to be good. We want to incentivize them. You will make more money providing services than you would front-running transactions. This is that road we should be taking. And so on the infrastructure side, we can start and level the playing field or almost level it with very simple solutions without changing any of the code and anything complicated. And then look at what comes out. Look at our solution, look at Skip, look at WallChain. Let's see what a more informed decision, and probably that would evolve over time. Let's see what the short term brings, and then decide, okay, let's explore a few directions. Let's see what we want to do. But we'll be able to make informed decisions where we're going. Not, let's say, like, I like Vitalik a lot, super great guy, super nice, and etc. Putting PBS on the roadmap where I'm not even sure, like a lot of people don't think it's a good thing and there are a million question marks. I don't think that was a smart decision. And so this is my take on the infrastructure side.
I can add a few words about
we don't talk bad things about Vitalik here. Go ahead, Yuri.
Yeah, I'd like to add a few words. Yeah, I'll try not to mention Vitalik here. Okay. Yeah, so there is like something we want and what we think can be fair in terms of like infrastructure and overall ecosystem. And I believe it's not only about this, but about a balance of what is technically possible. What are like our limitations here? If you take a high-level overview of the MEV and like its order flow, basically it's like who gets the order flow leverages the information of the order flow to the like maximal possible capability. So we have a user interacting with decentralized application. Then it goes to the wallet. Then it goes to like RPC and maybe private RPC, like mempool and infrastructure under the hood. And in any of these places, we can capture MEV. And the closer you are to the order flow, the more advantage you have. At WallChain, we provide this ability to decentralize applications. So all of the protocols can be designed, can follow the strategy of having like MEV and like being MEV aware of their design and launch with already MEV protection or just capturing the MEV that they create. So it's not only about infrastructure, like we living in a decentralized Web3 ecosystem. So it's like infrastructure of the blockchain, and also decentralized applications, users, wallets, and RPCs are also the players of the system. And they have also like actions to take to protect themselves and to capture the MEVs that they create. And like if we go through the strategies that we have listed here, most of that can be solved with like having these approaches. And if you like incentivize more DEXs, more wallets, more users to apply that to to their actions, because they have actually the power. Users have all the power in the market. They trigger actions. They bring money to the table. If no users, like we have no transactions. So we need to give them that power to take their MEV back. And then we wouldn't have such problems like with validators, like front-running users, because again, we don't need to expect them to behave good. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, I'd say sort of similar. you need both sides, I think, right? So like WallChain, I did check out your guys' design before. It's very cool, right? So you get to basically like update your transaction, which makes it atomic within the transaction. And it will like include a back run, which means like you've sort of skipped the block building or the bundling level, right?
Skip, yeah, like you.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very interesting design, right? But I think like,
Thanks.
let's say if you wanted to make that, for example, permissionless, right? If you wanted anyone to have the right to back run a transaction like that, it would be difficult and you would get into like some tricky situations. And I'm not saying you necessarily want that, but it would be difficult because you also need to know where in the block you're going to be, right? And that's where you have like block builders, right? Who can like sort of guarantee you some sort of, non-reverting state, for example, and put you, let's say, if you wanted to buy at the top of the block, if you want to buy at the middle of the block, or something else. So I think like the order flow auction and the block building stuff is just getting figured out in Ethereum. I don't think it's one of the only things it seems Flashbots hasn't figured out. And I feel like there's also an element of privacy there, right? So like, for example, let's say I don't want to get back run at all, right? I just want no one to ever see my transaction. Just like get it in, don't let nobody touch it, right? So like there's like a whole element of privacy there too. I think it would be cool, and I think what's really cool about this call here is we have 3 or 4 infrastructure providers that all kind of work in different parts of the stack. It would be cool to like get together and figure out maybe there's some things we can try, right? To like figure out like an entire pipeline so that, of course we're all going to compete, but like where we can compete in different places to sort of offer solutions that at the infrastructure layer, at the decentralized application layer, so that like it makes sense and like a BNB chain has like sort of like a suite of solutions that they can offer. I'd be curious to see like sort of like what is the interaction between the different parts.
Yeah, I think to add on to some thoughts that have been said, like I really like and want to like double down on the idea of like experimentation being a focus point here, because I think it's been mentioned very well that sort of we don't have to get you don't have to go with some type of architecture here that's already been used elsewhere. And I think if that is the approach, like one of the most important things that can be done for the ecosystem is like strong coordination on like data APIs. So sort of just like APIs that anyone can query and like monitor these solutions for like maybe misbehaving, but also just like if they are experiments, some will work, some don't. So let's try and figure out which does work for the ecosystem. And then, yeah, 2 other thoughts that like come to my mind are just sort of like differences in the network structure here at BNB. Is like, it sort of feels like the time to sophistication is like different here. It feels like searchers sort of, there's a lot of sophisticated searchers on other networks who then like came to BNB. And so like, I think that poses some interesting challenges because we've talked with people that are using like, TopoShot to like geolocate validators and all these things. And so you sort of like, if the solution is only at the validator, it sort of could end up with this like Arbitrum sort of sequencer spam scenario. And then also, it's also interesting because like a lot of validators are also sophisticated in front running, and that's like something we haven't really seen on Ethereum at least. And sort of like that was the whole thing to like front run. So I totally agree with Mag's point that there's sort of like 2 sides of this. Because I think like private transactions only, like what does that mean if sort of you don't trust the validator to actually, maintain the status quo on like how you treat that private transaction. So
I think like it's interesting that you mentioned right now, like what does it mean if you don't trust the validator? And Yuri mentioned it before, like we shouldn't expect them, and we shouldn't expect for them to be ethical or something. And interestingly, that blockchain community has spent a lot of resources and like brain power on how to make the consensus sort of like this is like bulletproof, nobody trusts anyone, this is like perfect, Byzantine, tolerant, whatnot, Casper, whatever. But in the end, like the problem appears to be like not on that part. Like, okay, so validators don't change anything. So from the consensus perspective, everything is perfect. Everything works well as supposed to be. And yet the community started to feel frustrated that like it's not a bug, it's a feature, so to speak. Like it works, but it doesn't. Like it doesn't do this. It's not like there was no spec, like in terms of but rather sort of like a utopian, like let's break the Wall Street stuff. But in the end, it sort of starts to look more and more and more like a Wall Street. It's the same, like we're having like the same issues with the same arbitrage and the same of the counter and the same, like it starts to be exactly the same, which makes sense because we are the same people after all. And but I think this is like the main issue here. It's not like this particular MEV solution is good, other is not good. It's just a matter of the blockchain community is naively thought about this time it would be somehow different, and it more goes to the same direction. So I think to go back to what Uri said before, like, do we completely trust that nobody does it, or everybody does it, or somebody does it? In a way, like in the traditional finance currently, somebody does it. Like, so in a way that there are hedge funds who do some kind of like activities, let's call it unethical, and or like commercial banks as well, or everyone. And but the users, because like traditional finance is so vast, so the users are not really into this. On the blockchain community, I think the blessing is that the community itself is much more tech sort of like oriented and understands better, at least, at what blockchain is. Like on the, like if you compare apples to apples, sort of like traditional finance user and blockchain user. And maybe we should get like more into get specifications, get on the, like maybe we should sort of like what WallChain trying to do, maybe like give users more ability and more knowledge about what's going on, so that essentially when everybody does it and everybody knows about it, it won't be as profitable as it will the same is like with arbitrage. It will just be even out, because if everybody, all the validators, all the users know about, then it will be much difficult to find like really big gold nuggets. It will be like sort of like sifting mountains to get some real gold. And I think this is the idea that we get to it. So it becomes so transparent and so sort of like ubiquitous that is just it doesn't leave space for bad actors to make big money out of it. Hence, it's just like more of a business. It's just more of a scalable business, and then it's just like it's another type of business. You don't like somehow find a single arbitrage trade then to get $500,000 profit. It will be just like grinding half a cent on each transaction, and like if it's there will be businesses who are into this, but it's not like more let's get to it, get rich and whatever. Like it's more like just like selling apples like at the half cent profit.
Right. I think it's just a natural step within the infrastructure, I guess.
So I want to agree both with Yuri and Vivek and slightly shed some more light on it. So first of all, I totally agree with Yuri. It's the whole private transaction thing is something that could work, again, in the short term. You don't want to trust value. Oh, you'll get a private transaction, but you won't front run it. No, you want to incentivize it. Okay, they should be making money out of private transactions, so they're better off doing private transaction, not front running, compared to front running transactions. we could get around it for a short period of time. Okay, we can do private transaction until we figure out the incentives. But if there is an incentive to take advantage of it, it will happen. You could imagine that if private transaction just protect you, nobody sends regular transaction. Everything is a private transaction. And if validators want to make money, they'll have to front run and back run the private transaction. So I totally agree with that we should just trust them not to have it. We should incentivize them. And as Vic said, everything is turning into TradFi because there is an incentive around it. I have an ongoing argument with Hashbots whether what's good and what's bad about traditional finance. What's the bad thing? From my perspective, front running. Okay, why I'm angry about Citadel that are front run, singing Robinhood users and taking transaction before them, or exchanges that see a transaction and then execute before that transaction. That is the thing that hurts users. Arbitrage is actually a good thing. Okay, we want everybody to have the same price. So when I send the transaction, I know I'm trading against the actual correct price. If price moved anywhere in the world, I want it to propagate anywhere as fast as possible. And if I'm pushing, I'm making well, I don't have that much money, but if you're big enough and you're making a trade and it pushes against the liquidity, you want all the global liquidity from all the other venues to push against the price in the opposite direction. So it's actually a good thing, but we shouldn't expect them not to do it. We should try to think of ways that incentivize them to do things in favor of the user, in favor of some outcome of decentralization, etc. Not because they're good actors, but because it pays them the money.
Right, exactly. I think it's a good summary as well. And this is bringing as well, what's the impact for Validator and the implication? At the end, it's we need to work with Validator on this as well. So, for example, would we need some sort of MEV boost on BSC? How would we manage potentially the reward distribution as well when there's MEV happening? Because we do have different participant relayer, the validator. Then we have as well the delegator, in BSC, as you know, the consensus, we have delegation on top of validator. So as a community, I can delegate to specific validator. So should I get rewarded as well? How should all those rewards be managed? And as well, how can it help the network to be more scalable in a way? Because with Block Builder, we can I know that, for example, bloXroute, they have a specific, let's say, certain speed in terms how fast you can build blocks as well and propagate it. So maybe you can help validator on specific tasks as well to ensure that we are scaling much faster, especially on BSC with 140 million gas limit. So our blocks can be potentially quite high and full, which require a lot of work from our validator. So how can we maybe offload some of this work from the validator itself to maybe another entity, but while maintaining decentralization, transparency? So all of these different aspects that is core to blockchain and why we are here as well. How can we manage such kind of potential changes for validator? And how can we work as a community, as different projects together openly around providing solutions? Maybe a quick solution to maybe fix what's happening right now, and then maybe a long-term solution as well for the future. So I don't know if anyone has some thought about how we can implement such kind of changes.
I can take a shot just explaining what.
Sure.
So we looked at PBS in Ethereum, and then when we went to Cosmos, which runs on Tendermint, we took some pieces of it and then we left some behind. So the first thing that we left behind was full block building, right? So back to one of Uri's points, if you have the right to build the entire block, you have the right to decide what goes in and what does not go in, right? And technically, I mean, in my mind, you just probably don't want to give that right. Let's say that person is honest and wants to include everything. They may not be able to because they live in the US, right? Therefore, they cannot include Tornado Cash transactions, and you just don't want them to have to make that decision, right? It's not a question of how they would make that decision. You just take it away from them, right? So the way that we did it was we just did top of block auctions, because what we found was the top of the block is the valuable part, right? That is where the MEV is. If you look at a whole block, it's like an airline, right? You have the first class seats and you have the economy seats. If the block sold all of the seats for the same price, the network or the plane would be getting less money. So the first class seats were at the front of the plane or the top of the block, that's where a lot of the value is. So that's what we decided to build. And then we let the validator include their own transactions that they have in their mempool at the end. right? And just like ensuring that there's no duplicates. So it's like a very, very like simple design there. The other thing that we did that, I would, we're here just to present what we've done, and maybe some of this is interesting and maybe we can work on something here. But what we've done that's been very successful in other ecosystems has been giving the validator full preference expression over how they want their blocks to be built, and to incentivize them to do the good thing, right? So how do we do that? So like basically they can choose whether they want to allow for front running or to not allow for front running. We figured it's better to give them the choice than to just like try to stop them, because they'll find something that does it if you try to prevent them. And then also we make it transparent how much money the validator is giving back to their delegators and how much they're keeping. So then when you're a delegator and you're looking, you say, well, I want to go for a validator that does, let's say, no front running and gives me the most amount back, right? And I want to take my money out of the validator that gives nothing back and front runs me all the time, right? And so like the question then becomes, how do you make sure that those things are verifiable, right? And I can like, we get sort of technical about that. But we found that those two things give a lot of incentive actually for validators to do the right thing, because you start to use social consensus, right? Because now all their delegators are looking at them and saying like, you're front running, I don't like that, right? So they lose 20% of their delegation. They're like, okay, fuck it, like turn it off, right? Excuse my language. So like that's like one extra important layer, right? You assume that validators care about their delegators, and therefore you want to give them the chance to, you want to force them to be transparent, right? So that they can be rewarded for good decisions and then face, the potential consequences of bad decisions. Just like, shareholders will want to see what their companies are doing, right? It's like important for transparency. And I think therefore it's important to make like informed decisions about what solution you choose.
It's more like ESG ranking, like in a way, like it's less like what the shareholders in terms of what they're doing, but it's more like how ethical, ecological, like this kind of stuff. Like, so maybe this is actually the way, because in a way, from the delegator's perspective, this is an investment vehicle, right? And like any other in traditional finance, again, now, especially like with the several years back, you do have like for the people who are interested, there is a ranking in terms of for each stock or for each ETF, what kind of impact it has on like the environment, some kind of like tobacco, guns, like whatnot, criminal. So essentially, we could think about something similar in the blockchain and environment, and essentially rank the validators in terms of this index. And then given this would at least provide the transparency again, like so as we previously discussed it, like currently the delegators only chase the yield. They don't have any other like options to compare the validators. There is one that gives 7 and there is one that gives 6, as Uri said, and I'll go to 7 because I don't know the difference. One is x66, the other is xyz. Okay, I don't know who they are. They're anonymous. I like x66. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's not even a matter of branding or anything, because everything is anonymous. So at least this way it provides sort of like a glimpse of what they're doing in terms of operation, and perhaps like gives users decision for the delegation. And if as you said, Mark, that should users decide that they are willing to, let's call it, sacrifice 1% of the yield, but they feel better about themselves, that they don't support these unethical practices, then maybe by itself it will even out the industry and ecosystem. And it's not even a technical solution. Like it's just give users.
I want to push against that. I agree and disagree, and I tried it. Okay, so first of all, Mac, like I like the airline, the the airplane analogy, I would point out that in addition to the top of the block, there is also an exit row at the back of the plane. So there is bottom of the block options to be the last one, which is kind of like the first for the next block, etc. So there is some nuance there, but I do agree that it's a very good thing to have, oh, here are pieces to add to your block, but if the validator gets them, and then it's like, well, he would add all the other transactions that it can. So if there is a censored transaction, but it pays some fee, he's better off including it versus excluding it. So I do agree with that. I actually tried, we have an ethical relay, which uses only ethical block builder that does not do front running. And I argue not only is it a good thing and it's good for the ecosystem, I have an economic incentive why people should do it. And not to go you through the entire thing, basically the amount of money in staking is much larger than the amount of money in front running. And so if you can remove completely and eliminate front running, the effect this will have on your stake is actually going to pay you more than how much you will make doing the front running. However, you have a tragedy of the common problem. Everybody in general would like for front running not to happen. But when it's my turn to build the block, then I prefer to include the front running and make more money kind of thing. So I actually made that, and it has some traction. I think 3% or something like that off the hash rate on the stake on the Ethereum side. But it needs, from my perspective, it needs an incentive. So I want to prevent front running, but not by saying, oh, listen, guys, this is a bad thing, because it would pay you better. Now, I totally agree. Stakers are the one calling the shots. Validators are a proxy. Okay, stakers would give their money to whoever provides the best yield or provide the most value. And we should be thinking about the stakers and how we can incentivize them. Really, it is the end of the chain. It is the staker that takes most of the money. So I'm very in favor of good data API and being able to see how much money, and validators don't really have a choice. They will have to pass that money to the stakers, or their stakers will go elsewhere because they make higher APY. So we should be mindful of it, but I want to say that just doing the right thing, from my experience, had not worked out enough to change. It would work in some small cases, but the more important thing is think incentives. Okay, it's kind of like, how do we make it that it's in everybody's best incentive to do X, whatever we think X is the right thing.
Uri, I'd be really interested to just compare, just a response to that super quick. Because in the ecosystem we're in, 100% of every single block is ethically built. And Skip has been the winning solution there in terms of that's been the thing, that's been the narrative and the approach that has won. And so I'm interested to understand
and also, well, I like Skip because my follow-ups joined you, Jacob, joined your team. So I already like Skip, but there is a difference, and it's kind of blunt. Okay, there is, pardon my language, shitload of money MEV on Ethereum. There is a lot of money of MEV in BSC, and there isn't anywhere close to these amounts anywhere else. Polygon is third place, 2 orders of magnitude smaller. We're talking millions and tens of millions compared to a lot of hundreds of millions. And I think that when the money gets big, you have different actors which change that have different preferences. Think, who are the stakers? Are they individuals compared to, oh, I am, or VCs that are strongly invested in the ecosystem and rather see it succeed versus making a profit? This is a more mature ecosystem where more money in it, where this is a hedge fund, this is a trade. They put the money there because it has high yield, and they make it for the money which is a good thing. Okay, we want to build a decentralized financial system which is valuable. So I think that is likely the key difference. Not to say I love the Cosmos ecosystem because it's one of the better ones in terms of they have good ethos. I like it. I think the maturity and amount of money makes a key difference between the two. Kind of like being blunt about it.
Could be.
Yeah, I think also like the cat is already out of the box too, on the fact that validators are already running these modified clients. So I think in a lot of other scenarios, it was sort of, we were like front running that, but now it's already happening. So we have to assume that if we were to propose a solution that the incentives aren't aligned, they're just going to fall back to the previous approach.
But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, it's kind of like incentives are a tool, and I told you we should collaborate and go, okay, how do we use these incentives so the outcome is something that we want? It's better to have incentives and a tool to adjust and direct where the community wants it. That's a good thing. It's kind of like, yes, this is the world that we live in. It's not perfect, but it's a good thing that we can affect it. And rational actors are a lot easier to work with. You know what they're going to do. When they're kind of like, well, they might do this because it's kind of like, I will affect them in a certain way, and you don't really have a way because you don't know what they're going to do. Had actually that problem with Flashbots originally that has no way to monetize it. Okay, how can we collaborate when you're building something and it isn't clear what's your end game here? And so like, it is true, cat is out of the bag, but it also allows us to be very rational about it and find solutions that make everybody happy.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've had issues collaborating as well in that sort of cost structure, since there's sort of minimum benefit for us to innovate.
Thanks. I can see that we had a lot of good discussions.
There is more than one way to.
Go ahead.
There's more than one way to
skin a cat. Like if you're talking about cats. Like I remembered it very well. Like it was horrifying. Like the expression.
So thanks everyone for joining today. We're almost at the end already of the hour. So I can see that we had quite a lot of discussion, and I guess a lot of work as well in the community. So I guess maybe we can still give you like each of them like some small minute to maybe wrap up like what's your thought, or like how we can move forward, and like what's your impression like the current ecosystem within BSC like regarding MEV, and what's the potential that you see as well for your own product. You want to go first? Sure,
I can say a couple words. First of all, just super excited to be here. Right, we're this is our one of our first real interactions with the BNB chain. I mean, a while ago we got excited because we saw that part of the Beacon chain was running on Tendermint, and we were wondering if there was activity there. We realized, oh wait, it's all BSC, which is now BNB chain as far as I understand it. But in terms of Skip, what we've done that has worked is we have created MEV solutions that are transparent so that stakers know exactly what is going on with a validator when they're making their staking decision, are verifiable, are censorship resistant, and then most importantly, are customizable. So validators can sort of choose what they want to do. We don't have a solution built out yet here, right? So we are, would be a new participant, and if we are desired, and we've been asked by a couple of many of the validators on a BNB chain run Skip when they have their Cosmos validators, and I'm happy to be transparent about who those are. And we'd be interested in collaborating on something and bringing our skill set here. I'm not entirely sure what that looks like yet. It would be awesome if the ecosystem was welcoming, and we would be happy to work on something here. But yeah, thank you for having us, and we're open to any questions. It's Skip Protocol on Twitter.
I'll take a step next. So I want to echo Mag a bit. So I'm excited about three things. First, on having this discussion, because we've been working and speaking with validators, and they were kind of like, well, we want to do it, but we're not sure what the community feels about it. And so like, I know others are doing it, I'm not sure we should do it, etc. So just putting it out and have a discussion around it so they feel comfortable. Will everybody get mad at them if they start like to do MEV stuff, or they won't get mad at them? So just talking about it and putting it out in public is super important and critical. Second thing, everybody here around the table, I think there is a lot of room for collaborations. Everybody are bringing a different skill set. We have some overlap, but I think there are a lot of potential collaborations between the different parties here, and I think that would be a good thing. And third, we as BloXroute, we already have a solution for BSC. We have, we have in the pipeline solutions that we want to bring to the table, but up until now, this discussion needed to happen first. And I'm very excited to see what's going to come out of it. Let's experiment with different potential solutions and where they take us. And from that, figure out, okay, what's the long-term goal here? Like, let's try this. This worked. We tried this. This didn't work. Okay, so we should focus on this side. Where do we want to push that? So I'm pumped about it, and everybody around the table, like, looking forward to connecting with you afterwards too.
Cool. Yeah, super happy to be here and discussing. I think the data that will come from these sort of MEV experiments here will be studied for quite some time. So I'm really excited to see what happens. I think in terms of like BlockNative's role here, I think we're unlikely to be sort of like the lead, pioneer pushing this, but like we're very open to like collaborating, providing input, and then like if there's like room for us to run infrastructure that helps like create a more distributed, like maybe like relay or builder or like network, whatever sort of the final solution or medium term solutions come to be, like we're if the incentives are there, we're totally happy to jump in.
Hey, yeah, I'd like to add a few words at the end about like how I see it comparing to traditional finance. I see a huge difference, at least in two things. First, like traditional finance is like 100 years, and the market of MEV and payment for order flow is like billions and billions of dollars. And it's like 100 years. DeFi is like roughly 5 years, and we already have discussions about it. And I'm deadly happy and bullish that we have these discussions and we're ready to take actions. And second point is that users are still using Robinhood because they don't have a choice. They don't have a power. And on BNB chain, on blockchain, they do have the power. And at WallChain, we just enable the power for them. Users have a choice. They can use bloXroute private RPC to make sure their transactions are private. They can use WallChain to get their MEV back. So that's the difference that I see. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Victor, you wanted to add the last word as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess thank you for everyone's coming, and it was a great discussion, and it's surely an interesting topic to talk to. It was it's very different from the traditional community calls where we talk about bug this and bug that. This is more into where the money is. Let's chase it, this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But it's a good thing. I think we'll think about more talks like this, because essentially these kind of calls give more trust into community, into the chain, and eventually getting more partners together and thinking about different aspects and solutions, and eventually how to make it better for everyone.
Thanks. Exactly. I think it's bring more trust and openness as well on our network. So hopefully different validators are going to ask you guys to help them in potentially doing MEVs as well and doing it in a transparent way. So just to conclude as well, I just want to remind the community that we have a prize pool for who want to summarize up these different codes before sending it to us before end of the day, so we can as well push a nice summary of what happened today. And we'll see you next time. See you.
See you in
Thank you, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.